Hey, I'm Randy and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help folks find high-value home theater, hi-fi, headphone equipment, and today we're talking about the HTD, or Home Theater Direct, Level 3 bookshelf speaker. Yeah, so sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the HD. I always want to say HTD, Level 3. Today's sponsor is Sith Audio audiophile hats. When you want to increase the level of quality of the sound coming into your ear holes, you're going to need to get an audiophile hat from Sith Audio. They're $73.17. No, they're not. They're $173.17. Guaranteed to bring your music to the next level. Sith Audio audiophile hats. HTD, Home Theater Direct, HTD.com. They've been a direct-to-consumer company for a long time. Actually, one of the first. Started like 20 years ago that they were selling directly to the consumer through their website. Not only do they make speakers, they also make amps. They also have some pretty cool home automation stuff where they take an Alexa device and shove it in your ceiling, and then you talk to it and it does all sorts of cool stuff. If you've never been over there, check out htd.com. Go check them out. They have a bunch of speakers. So they have 2 or 3 different levels of speakers. This is their top end, the level 3. I kind of like that. It's very easy, simple. Level 3, bookshelf, tower, center speaker, and maybe surrounds. I don't know if they have surrounds or not. I probably should have done that, done a little homework. But they've been on my radar for a long time because they're based out of Plano. And I like the ribbon tweeters, or the AMTs, whatever you want to call them. One of my patrons reached out and asked me about these. And I'm like, oh yeah, I had kind of forgotten about him. Then he reached out to Home Theater Direct, and funny enough, I reached out to them and I got a reply back. I'm really glad that I went over there and they were nice enough to let me take a pair of speakers home with them. Not to keep. They just gave me the speakers and said, you've got about 60 days. Otherwise, we're going to come get you, because they know where I live. The Model 3 bookshelf speaker. It has a 6.5-inch woofer. Okay, comes in black or veneer, brown veneer. So you get black painted or you get brown veneer. And it's very nice. 6.5-inch woofer. KAPTON ribbon tweeter. The 6.5-inch woofer, and I gotta make sure I'm gonna read it so I don't get it wrong, has a fabric ceramic doping woofer. So the woofer is actually made from some type of fabric. We'll call it silk. I don't know. Maybe burlap. Probably not burlap. Then it has a ceramic coating to add stiffness, and then it has a sticky polymer doping to increase warmth. The ribbon tweeter is a KAPTON, which apparently DuPont made it, and somebody stuck it on a bunch of other stuff and made a tweeter out of it, and they put it into the speaker. Very nice. Very nice waveguide right here. So very broad, very wide, and then a bit of a vertical flare. It's crossed over at 2500 hertz with a third order crossover. So the higher the order of the crossover, the steeper the crossover is. So third order is, I believe, 18 dB. So steep. They're cutting this tweeter off pretty hard at 2500 hertz. Front port speaker, very reminiscent of the Klipsch RB612. Very similar, kind of an oval thing here. Here's the woofer. Oh yeah. And it has exposed hardware here. I don't know if that adversely affects the sound. I didn't hear it if it did, but it's pretty cool. Kind of an industrial feel. 3/4-inch MDF. Yeah, one of the best braced speakers, if not the best braced speaker I've ever had. They're heavy. As soon as I pulled them out of the box, I'm like, okay, all right. This speaker isn't playing because it's heavy, thick, very, listen to that. It's like hitting a cinder block. Very well braced. On the back, you can bi-amp or bi-wire them. There's also 2 little screw holes so that you can put it on a wall if you want to. Since it's front ported, you better hit a stud though when you drill the holes, because otherwise this is pulling some drywall off your wall, because it's pretty heavy. So when I first got these, I put them in my bedroom. That's what I usually do. Let them run for about 30 days or so while the wife and I enjoy some television. No center channel. So I just ran the home theater, but really mostly TV, Law and Order, true crime, all that good stuff. The receiver I put these on is the MARANTZ NR1711. That's rated at 50 watts into 8 ohms, and these are also rated at 8 ohms as well. I think they go down to 44 up to 40,000 hertz is what they're spec'd at. I think they're 87 dB. Actually, forgot to write that down. Pretty sure they're 87 dB, 8 ohm. Not hard to drive, not super efficient though. So you may want a little bit of juice. 50 watts was just fine. Also listen to these in the near field on my brand new Akita or Akita preamp, however you say it. I built it. It was a lot of fun, actually. That into the Akita or Akita power amp. And I also listened to these on the SMSL DA9, puts out about 40 watts into 8 ohms. Soundstage and imaging, as with other ribbon tweeters, i.e. Wharfdale, Evo 4.1, 4.2, Emotiva, B1 Plus, really all the Emotiva speakers, vertical off access or vertical performance once you get your ear above or below the tweeter isn't as good as some soft dome or aluminum dome or titanium tweeters that have a different kind of waveguide or horn. This is not symmetrical, so this goes very wide. It does go vertical and down, but it's not the same as the lateral. You can hear it a bit. It wasn't as bad on these as some other ribbon tweeters I've heard as far as getting up or below, but there is going to be a pretty decent amount of drop off in the sound, which means if you get up above the speakers, they're going to sound different up there than if you get down at ear level. With all that said, imaging was really just fine. Most of the sound stage is happening between the speakers, may go outside. I did notice on home theater with movies, things would go way right, but that also has a little bit to do with your room. So soundstage and imaging is highly dependent upon your room and, come to find out, highly dependent upon your electronics as well. Bottom line is, when I had these hooked up to the Akita stack, I hate that word stack, they did a fantastic job. So they have the DNA to image and soundstage very well. They didn't hold back with the right electronics. Center image right on there. I didn't have to fiddle with them very much to get a very good solid center image. The chain, Fleetwood Mac, dead center. Chocolate Chip Trip by Tool, very seamless, almost a 360-degree experience. Again though, depends on your room, depends on your electronics. All in all, I'm very pleased with the soundstage and imaging. No issues whatsoever. Let's talk about bass. Bass, not super extended, not bumped. Very neutral, very linear, as some people would like to say. Narcissistic Cannibal at the 1 minute mark goes doo-doo, goes very, very, very low. I couldn't really hear it on these. And it's not a knock against these. These are rated at 44 hertz, which isn't super low. Some bookshelves will go much lower, but it's still a respectable number. And since HTD.com stands for Home Theater Direct, they're probably counting on you putting a subwoofer with these. These by no means are embarrassed by other speakers. I've just heard other bookshelf speakers go lower, but those speakers are kind of designed around maybe 2-channel listening, and they can do home theater. I would imagine these were home theater first, which can also do music, and they do a great job with music because the bass is not whacked out all over the place with the frequency response. What's Up Danger off the Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack was not quite as punchy as I've heard on a lot of other speakers. And while I'm saying this, it's not extended, it's not punchy, it's there. I'm not saying this is thin or doesn't have bass. It does. It's just very well behaved. Tonally, it's very good. So What by Miles Davis off of Kind of Blue. The bass, and here's the thing, there is a sense of space with the bass. It's clear, it's not muddy, there is no cover up or smearing of anything in the mid-range with the bass. It is very well done, very well behaved. If you're looking for a very punchy experience with the bass, probably not going to get it with this speaker without tone controls. And if you got a vintage receiver, you can hit the loudness knob or loudness adjustment and have just as much bass as you want. Let's talk about mid-range. Mid-range. Okay, so let's talk about the crossover frequency. 2500 hertz. That means this woofer is handling a lot of the mid-range duty. And it sounds like it. Mid-range leans warm. Mid-range leans smooth. It's very good. Hello by Adele. Very smooth presentation, not overtly clinical. Tracy Chapman, also very smooth, very nice. Again, not overtly detailed. But when I switch it over to Alanis Morissette, now her voice is a bit higher. So now we're jumping into the tweeter when she goes up on the top. Her voice is both smooth on the bottom end and then it gets more detailed on the top end. Not saying it sounds bad at all, but that was just one thing that kind of popped out. Normally with a ribbon tweeter, I expect a just enormous amount of clarity. Wharfdale Evo 4.1 kind of bucked that trend and really sounded pretty smooth. The B1 Plus by Emotiva is kind of the exact opposite. A lot of that speaker is crossed over at 2000 hertz. So the tweeter is getting more involved with more of the mid-range. It's just something that I noticed because male vocals, Tracy Chapman, Adele, all had more of a smoother presentation, where Alanis, when she went up, it became more clinical and more detail-oriented. But Redemption Song by Bob Marley was flawless. Some of these speakers, like the B1 Plus, they don't sound natural, but they don't sound bad either. I really like the B1 Plus and its presentation of the mid-range. But on here, I think one is getting really almost a warm sound in the mid-range until you go up to right around that 2000, 2500 point. And I did hear a bit of resonance at that crossover point. Also heard that on the B1 Plus. Also only heard that in the near field though in my office. In a larger room, I didn't really notice it. All in all, mid-range leans warm, very enjoyable, gets a bit detailed with higher female voices. So there is a handoff of the baton between the woofer and the tweeter. I will say though that normally when a woofer is handling most of the mid-range duties, it's not very good. Quite the opposite on here. It was very good. Very good. Smoother presentation though. Let's talk about treble. Treble, Nina Simone, Sinnerman, 16th notes at the beginning, very good. There is simultaneously detail, clarity with realism. So the decay hangs out exactly how long it's supposed to. It sounds real. Doesn't sound brief, doesn't sound abbreviated. Very good. There is a bit of sibilance in here. I noticed it with Alanis Morissette when she and also noticed it on You Know You're Right by Nirvana. It wasn't in your face, it wasn't constant. Alanis Morissette, that song is pretty sibilant to begin with, but I'd never heard sibilance on You Know You're Right by Nirvana before. Again, it wasn't a deal breaker, it wasn't all the time, but it was something that I did notice on these. There is definitely a sense of space and air on this speaker, not as apparent as the Emotiva, but probably a little bit more so than the Wharfdales. Overall, it's very good. All the MTV Unplugged records, all the live stuff that I listened to, could definitely get a sense of the space that it was recorded in. What are my final thoughts? Final thoughts. I do have one gripe. The grills. The grills have those little posts with the little circle at the end. Sphere lollipop. Looks like a lollipop. I almost broke it the first time pulling them off and trying to put them back in, and one of them started to bend. Now, I didn't break it. I maneuvered it around a bit, but we're splitting hairs here. I just wish it had a magnetic grill. It would be a lot more simple, because if you're going to be taking the grills on and off, just be aware that it's got those little posts, and those things can and will break on you. This speaker feels like it sits right between basically all the Emotiva line, Wharfdale, and then this one. So this one, so the Emotiva is probably the most clinical and detailed. The Wharfdale is the smoothest. This one sits right in the middle, which is good because I like both those speakers. But the Wharfdale Evo series and the Emotiva series sound quite a bit different. This is kind of a amalgamation combination. It's like they had a baby. It's a big baby though, and with veneer. It takes on the sound of its electronics, or the electronics it's hooked up to, not their electronics, it's my electronics. Anyway, it's pretty transparent. One will hear differences in electronics, and this thing does scale quite a bit. As you go up the chain in electronics, this thing will perform. Now, one could say that about just about any speaker. Some speakers, you notice it more than others, though. At $480 to $550, this represents a enormous value. It can play home theater and it can play music. It is not the most extended speaker. It is not the most punchy speaker. It's more refined than the Emotiva. Has a bit more excitement than the Wharfdale. Again, lies right in the middle. This is actually quite a bit less expensive than the Wharfdale 4.1. I think those are $700. This is about twice the cost of the B1 Plus, but also a much bigger speaker. It also takes really well to tone controls. This is picking fights with speakers twice as expensive. The ELAC Unify reference to me is pretty similar to this, and that's $1,100. This is not as refined as far as the styling, the cues like this. It does have a bit of a kind of a separation around the baffle. It looks really, really, really good, but you can tell when you look at this compared to like a Polk or an ELAC, the design on this is a bit more simple and good, fine. I'd rather have it sound awesome for half the price than be paying for a curved front baffle or something like that. If you're looking for a V-shaped speaker, this probably isn't the speaker for you. This is a very linear speaker. I think this goes toe-to-toe with the ELAC Unify reference. Huge value, and kind of fills a hole and a price point, because there isn't really a speaker that has a ribbon tweeter and a 6.5-inch woofer that is in this price category. They also have a very generous return policy, so if you want to try it out, you don't particularly care for it, then you can return them. Smooth mid-range, linear bass, not bumped, doesn't roll off super far down there. That's very good. Doesn't seem thin at all. Overall, zero issues recommending this speaker. Very good. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon. Patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have a Patreon-only Facebook group. You can also sign up for Amazon Music. There's a link in the description. Click on the link. You get a few months for free. I get a couple of dollars. There's also links in the description. Those are affiliate links. However, I will link these. That is not an affiliate link. Check them out though. Go over there, take a look at it. They have a set of towers of these. Yeah, they're $1,000 for a pair of tower speakers that are built like this. That is a very compelling speaker and a very compelling value proposition. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen through your new HTD Level 3 bookshelf speakers and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.